If you're tired of playing against the Yugioh tearlaments, then you better take a look at this. What is up, guys? This is Tcg Sam here, and in today's video I'm coming at you guys with my Dark World deck for the December 2022 format. This deck is one of the most underrated decks in the format, and I think it has so much potential considering how good some of the cards are. So if you guys enjoy this type of content, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. With that being said, let's jump straight into the deck profile. So with Dark Worlds, there isn't really a set build right now that's like the standard. People are experimenting with a lot of things, and this is a build that I've been experimenting with, and it has been pretty good from my experience. Starting off with the big Dark Worlds, we are playing 3 copies of Grapha and 3 copies of Rainbow. So Rainbow, I'm gonna explain first. Rainbow is pretty good because not only does it act like Grapha, allowing you to loop your Dark World monsters, but also has a very good discard effect when you're going first, compared to something like Grapha, which actually doesn't do that much when you're going first, because, well, your opponent's not going to have any cards, whereas Rainbow actually grabs you card advantage, so you can grab a Silva or a Grapha to keep making your Dark World plays. You also want to play 3 and 3 of each because the Bestials and the Shizu cards are very common this format, so you want to put as many of these guys in your graveyard as possible so you don't lose to those cards, because these are the key to allowing you to keep making those crazy loops with your Dark World cards by bouncing them back to your hand. And of course they're level 8, so if you do choose to play ranked 8s, you have very easy access to them with these cards. For the other big Dark Lord monster, it is just 2 copies of Silva. So you actually, even though you aren't focusing like on a hand loop build, Silva is still very important just because it allows you to have a very easy card to bounce back with your Rainbow and your Grapha, putting it back to your hand and allowing you to keep putting more monsters on the board, because a lot of the smaller Dark Worlds actually don't have the effect. So like where you bounce them back, they're unable to be put on the board again very easily, except for cards like Silva. So you want to play Silva for that reason. And of course, its hand loop effect is very good, even if you don't open Ceruli, because if it's in your hand and you have the Grapha Fusion on the board, your negate essentially becomes a hand loop 3 because they're losing a card and they're losing 2 more from Silva's effect. So really good. And then for the key Dark World monsters, we are playing 3 copies of Genta, 3 copies of Snow. So these, I would say, are honestly the best Dark World monsters out there. Genta helps you unbrick so many hands, helps you start so many plays. Same thing with Snow. It's just the best, honestly, the best Dark World to discard. It just gets you any Dark World card you could possibly want. So you definitely have to max out on both of these. Of course, they're level 4s as well, which help with your rank 4 plays. And then one of the last 2 Dark Worlds I play is Beige. So Beige is a little bit underwhelming because its only effect is when it's discarded, you can special summon it back. But the reason I play it is because we want more level 4s in this deck. Level 4s are insane because the rank 4s this deck can make are incredibly powerful. It also fulfills a similar role as Silva, where you can keep bouncing it back with Grapha and Rainbow, and then discarding it to put more monsters on the board. And then finally, I play only 1 copy of Ceruli. Hand looping, I decided, wouldn't be a focus of this deck because I figured most of the times, if you're able to actually put up a decent board, a lot of decks won't be able to play through it regardless. So the hand loop you don't really need. But I decided to play 1 copy of Ceruli, and the reason being you always want to have the option to search it off of Snow if your hand allows you to hand loop. You need a pretty specific hand to actually be able to hand loop. So I decided to put the 1 in there just for that reason. Of course, it's not terrible too. If you have a handful of Dark Worlds, you can like discard it off of like gates and then trigger it. But this is just not a focus of the deck, so that's why I'm only playing 1. That's it for the Dark World monsters. For the dangers next, I am playing a pretty sizable package. We are playing 3 copies of Nessie, 2 copies of Mothman, 1 Chupacabra, 1 Bigfoot, 1 Tsuchinoko, and 1 Jackalope. So I would say these 5 are pretty standard. These are just the best danger monsters out there. No matter if you hit them or not, you always get the most pluses out of them. But then the reason why I'm playing 2 Mothman is because, like with Beige, you want level 4 monsters. Mothman's effect also, even though you don't really want to use it against the Mirror or against the Tearlament matchup, it is very good against Rogue. You can very easily trigger a bunch of your Dark World effects even if it gets sniped. So that's why I play 2. 1 copy of Chupacabra, it is level 4 as well, and it's sort of a quote-unquote safe danger to search with your Nessie, so that no matter what happens, you get a free body onto the board. It also is a Fiend monster as well, so you can discard it off the gates of the Dark World for some extra synergy. And I decided to play 1 copy of Bigfoot. You definitely don't have to play this, but if you do play a bigger rank 8 package, I absolutely recommend that you do. The reason why I don't like this at all is because going first, if it gets sniped, like, yeah, it just sucks. So you definitely don't have to play this. I just chose to because I wanted a little bit higher of a danger count, and I didn't want to play 3 copies of Mothman. So that's it for the danger monsters. They just help you turbo through your deck very quickly, put more bodies on the board for your Link plays and XYZ plays, and they're honestly a very powerful part of the deck. What I like to call a danger on crack, Salamander Catalyzer. So this card essentially just allows you to reveal itself and 1 fiend monster in your hand, special summon one of them and discard the other. So essentially it's a danger monster that's level 4, but you get to choose what you discard, and that's honestly insane because you don't have to rely on the RNG element of the danger monsters. This allows you to pick the darkworld monster that you want to discard, special summon this as a free level 4 extender, get the darkworld effect, and go off from there. You can also recur itself with this other effect as well. It's also a fiend monster, so lots of synergy with the deck. The only thing is it isn't a dark, although that doesn't really matter too much. But I definitely think you should play 3 of this card, even though it's strictly a hard one to turn. I think this is a card you always want to see in your hand, just because it can help unbrick you when you have a handful of darkworld monsters, and it's just a great extender. It also works very well with the next card that I'm about to show. I do apologize for the proxy, but this is 3 copies of Phantom Skyblaster. So Phantom Skyblaster essentially is the normal summon of this deck. When it's normal summon, you can special summon Skyblaster tokens up to the number of other monsters you control in the field. So if you just normal summon it alone, you can summon 1 token, but if there's any other monster on your side of the field, you're able to summon 2 tokens, and that means you instantly have 4 monsters on the board that allow you to go into Saryuja Skuldread, because you can turn one of the tokens into a Link Spider. And Saryuja is one of the most insane cards that I think were ever printed, and it's incredibly good in this deck to help you unbrick. Not to mention, the high count of danger monsters and Salamander Catalyzer means you're pretty much always going to have a body on board. That's also including like Genta when you resolve its effect. So you essentially have so many ways to put a body on the board before you normal summon that this card is essentially always generating 2 tokens and always turns into Saryuja. If you don't want to make Saryuja, you can absolutely just overlay with the other level 4 you have on the board for a rank 4, and then you have 2 tokens to make your Link plays with, which is still pretty insane for a normal summon. So considering this deck doesn't really need its normal summon, I figured this was one of the most high impact normal summons and definitely is a card you want to consider. So that's it for the monsters. Now for the spells, we are playing 1 copy of Archives and 1 copy of Accession. I think 1 Archives is pretty standard. It's a pretty good card. You definitely don't want to see multiples of it. So for that reason, we're playing 1. If you see it, it's nice, but you also don't need it to win you the game. I only play 1 Accession, even though I really like Accession as a card, just because it's a way to allow you to play on your opponent's turn. It puts up an Omni Gate to protect your plays. I just found that through testing a lot of the times, either you're making it in a very subpar way, so like you have to specifically have like a good Darkworld to discard plus a hard-drawn Grapha in your hand to actually make it normally, which is a little difficult. And just not really that consistent. I also didn't want to clog on too many copies of it. It's okay if you discard off a danger, of course, you can bring it back with the zone effect, but I just figured with a card like Snow, you're able to search it anytime that you need. So I didn't feel like you needed more than 1 copy. Although it's definitely a very good card, and I could see some people considering like Foolish Burial, Goods plus Accession. It's definitely good enough for that, if you want to try that. And then finally, I played 1 copy of Puppetry. The reason I play Puppetry is because of the prevalence of the Yushizu cards and the tearlaments cards. Of course, going first, this is essentially a quote-unquote like interruption that you have against most decks that are going to be pretty good. You just banish 3 cards from their graveyard. It's good against pretty much everything except for Flunder and Exosister. You also trigger your Darkworld monster, of course. But it also has lots of applications going second, because when you're playing into like a Shizu tier board and they have a bunch of shufflers in the graveyard, they have like Merly in the graveyard, you can activate this in the draw phase, for example, pitch your Darkworld monster and then banish the Merly so their elf is dead, and then you banish the shuffler so they can't disrupt your graveyard, and then you trigger your Darkworld effect. Not to mention, you also have it as a pseudo follow-up as well. So I definitely like 1 for that reason. Of course, you're going to side it out in the matchups it's not very good against, but it's pretty good for the most part. And then 3 copies of the Gates of Darkworld. This card is not a hard once per turn, and so is Genta's Surge Effect is not a hard once per turn either, which means you can very reasonably turbo through 3 of these every single turn. And that's pretty important because it allows you to draw deeper into your deck and keep triggering your Darkworld effects. So definitely you want to play 3 copies of it. I don't think you need to play Terraforming, although you can definitely swap the Bigfoot for a Terraforming if you want to. And then finally, I decided to play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. The reason being, when testing the deck, I found that there are a lot of times where you want very specific Darkworld monsters. So, Snow, Genta, Rainbow. But then if you draw cards like Silva without ways to like discard them, or like Grapha, you just want to dig deeper into your deck to draw into those names. Similarly, if you open like a handful of like Zalman or Catalyzers and Dangers, you don't have a Darkworld card yet, you can dig deeper with into your deck with the Allure of Darkness. It also allows you to see your power card in Phantom Skyblaster a lot easier, so I just really like it for that reason. There's just so many benefits to playing this card that I think it's definitely worth it, even though you're, of course, not triggering your Darkworld effects through it. I still think it's a very good card in this deck. So 40 cards in the main. Moving on to the extra deck, we are playing 2 copies of the Grapha Fusion. This is pretty standard at this point. You don't need to make this to win, although it's a very, very nice part of your end board. It isn't as integral in my build of Dark Worlds as it may be in others. So you could probably get away with 1, but I just like having 2, so your accession is rarely ever dead. For the XYZ's 1 copy of Dugaris, this card's insane. It just draw 2, trigger a Dark World effect. The skip draw phase just doesn't matter because you'll literally have a handful of cards during the next turn at the end of your turn anyways. This card is pretty insane for that reason. For the other rank 4s, 1 Dweller, 1 Baguska. It's just the most powerful rank 4s of the format right now. Good against tier, good against everything else. If you get shifted, similarly to how Tearlaments would summon a Shizu monster, you can summon Salamander or summon like a Mothman or something, and then normal summon level 4 and just overlay for the Baguska to stall it out. And then 1 copy is used since we are playing the XYZs, which is pretty standard. And then once again, I apologize for this proxy, but this is Muckracker from the Underworld. One of the best extenders in this deck. It's just very unfortunate that it locks you into Fiend monsters. So for that reason, we need to play Nightmare monsters in my opinion. This is sort of like what's different about my deck than the other ones. It focuses more like on the link aspect of it. So we are actually playing 1 of every single Nightmare monster. These not only are very good going second to help break boards, but they're also Fiend monsters that allow you to summon them under Muckracker's restriction. So your end boards a lot of the times will consist of like Griffin, Muckracker, and then either Phoenix or Cerberus. And Griffin is a pretty underrated card right now. It's still an incredibly powerful floodgate that a lot of decks would struggle to get over. So being able to set up this Griffin even under Muckracker's lock is still really good. But like I mentioned, they're also just really good cards going second. You have a lot of ways to put monsters on the board, especially with Phantom Skyblaster. So I think for that reason, just 1 of everyone, they all come up. So they're really good. I play, of course, the 1 copy of Skull Dread. This card is very, very easily made with the Phantom Skyblaster. Can help you unbrick, and it's just a very good combo enabler. I think you only need 1. If you're putting more bodies on the board, I think you want to be start going for your Nightmare plays to set up like your Griffin at the very end. So I think 1 is more than enough. 1 Link Spider for the Phantom Skyblaster tokens. You do need it because you need different names for Yugioh. It also gives you a down arrow to co-link your Nightmares with, and that's also really cool going second. 1 copy of Underworld Goddess. This is to out cards like Avermax and of course Big Threats. You're also able to very easily put a lot of random bodies on the board, and you can catch your opponents off guard when you just link off their best monsters to summon this. It's also Fiend monsters. You can do it under the Muckracker lock, which is cool. If you don't want to play it, you can play Axis Go Talker because it pairs very well with all the Nightmare monsters that I play in the extra deck. And then the last card is a flex spot in my opinion. I chose to play Akashic Magician. The reason being for that Ceruli hand loop play, if you're, like I said, if you're able to see it, cool, you can very easily hand loop your opponent for 4, but this is not a very consistent or focal part of the deck, so you definitely don't have to play this. You can consider playing DDD Wave King Caesar plus DDD Machinex. I really like that pairing because essentially you can just cut the Baguska for it. It essentially just becomes like another XYZ disruption you can make under the McCracker lock. And I know I'm emphasizing the McCracker lock a lot, but McCracker I think is one of the best cards in this deck because it just reborns a Dark World and then just triggers your Dark World monster in your hand. And you want to be able to play under that restriction as often as you can. So you can definitely try out that DDD package instead if you want. So that's going to do it for this deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section below. I will be posting a test hand / combo tutorial video for this specific build in the very near future, so do stay tuned for that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.